this is where there's a gap, right? There's a gap between the valley, and there's a gap between the valley, which is where they're currently at, and the peak, the thing that they desire. And in that gap is where all the money is made. In the gap is where we offer our products, our services. In the gap is where we can go ahead and say, and this is how I can help you. This is where you offer it inside of the gap. And typically you want to name it something.
You're tuned in to the Event Gems podcast, the podcast where coaches, consultants, and speakers learn how to produce transformational and profitable events. I'm your host, Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly. Join me and other industry experts as we teach you how to maximize the power of your next brand building event. Time to drop those gems. Let's fly. Ever wondered how to turn your stories into powerful tools that connect with your audience and drive conversions? In today's episode, we're joined by Andy Henriquez, the master storyteller. Andy, a keynote speaker, storytelling coach, and author of Show Up for Your Life, has worked with major organizations like NASA and Bacardi, helping them leverage storytelling to elevate their brand and increase revenue. This episode highlights the art of deeply connecting with your audience through stories that truly resonate and inspire action. Before we jump into the episode, are you hosting your first event and don't know where to start? Download the Diamond in the Rough Event Host Starter Guide. This guide will take you from confusion to clarity and help you host your next event with ease, so you can focus on making a memorable impact. Now, let's dive in. Welcome, Andy, to the Event Gems podcast.
Hey, Natasha. Hey, look, I've been looking forward to it. So I'm excited to be here with you and your listeners. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I saw Andy this past weekend at my cousin Joan's event, and he was a speaker, and I was commenting to him before we came on live that it was the first time I've ever seen you speak in person. And it was so powerful, the framework that you gave, how someone could tell a powerful story and how you can tell a story in such a way that you're not re-traumatizing people with the story that you tell, right? That was such a powerful reframing of how you tell powerful stories that resonate with people, that allows people to feel seen in what it is that you're sharing. Can you talk a little bit about that particular framework of storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just want to also give everybody sort of the context, right? So for so many of us as entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, event planners, and whatever industry you're in, the thing is, a lot of times we're super excited to talk to people about what it is that we do. We're so eager to offer our services to them. So like, hey, I could help you to be able to plan this very important event for you. I could offer you my coaching program. I could offer you my products and my services and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with being excited about what it is that you want to offer people. There's nothing wrong about that. But what we forget is that at the end of the day, when you want to be able to create and have influence and move people to action, you still got to make a genuine connection. And so if you remember over this past weekend when I was speaking at the event, one of the key things I was telling people first was that the importance is they got to make sure that they connect before they sell. Well, the reason why is because connection is always going to precede conversion. So it really doesn't matter what industry you're in. However, I personally believe that the best way for you to be able to connect with your prospects and your audience and the people that you want to do business with is really by leveraging a powerful story, right? Stories are going to become more memorable in the eyes of your prospects and the people that you want to do business with. Stories is going to allow you to create connection at a hyper speed. And then stories also allow you to paint the landscape, Natasha, for them on like how they're going to benefit from your products and your service, right? And the part that you're talking about, Natasha, is that sadly for most people, when they are attempting to share and tell stories, which by the way, most entrepreneurs do not do a very good job of leveraging stories in their business, right? Whether they're entrepreneurs, they are employed and so forth. Most people do a good job leveraging stories. And then what I was sharing during that session was that when we do tell stories, that there's a specific framework that can really help you to be able to position your products and your services as the solution, but there's a certain way you need to do it, right? So the thoughts, if you want, I'll break that framework down you were excited about. Do you want me to go ahead and share that? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Yes.
Cool. So when someone has taken the time to learn how to properly craft and share their message, and they want to do it in a way that is going to help them to get more customers and get more clients, when we share the story, our stories are typically going to really have two aspects. One is what I refer to as peaks, and then also valley. So the valley experience in your story, it represents the challenge that you've been through, right? So it's the challenge that you've been through that you believe your customers, your clients could relate to. Fill in the blank, whatever it is you help people with, right? So maybe it was your time that you were struggling to put on a great event. Maybe it was the moment you went through the divorce. Maybe it was the moment that you were struggling to get your business to the next level. But that valley experience represents the challenge and the struggle and the thing that we are trying to get to the other side, right? Now, here's the cool thing. That's one aspect of where we leverage our story. But then there's another part. The other part is what we refer to as the peak. The peak represents really the payoff or the thing that we believe our customers and our clients desire, right? So the peak represents us getting to the other side. This is where, maybe we are putting on amazing events. Maybe this is the stage where we are in the happy, fulfilling relationship. We're making the money we desire. We are having the time freedom that we want. And here's where the mistake normally happens. Either people spend too much time, Natasha, when they're speaking from the peak, so that the people in the valley that they want to do business with, they're listening and they're like, okay, I'm happy that you're in a happy, fulfilling relationship. I'm happy you're great. I'm happy you're making all this money. I'm happy that you're event planner on the planet, right? I'm happy. Good for you. But what does that got to do with me down here, right?
Yeah.
So only from the peak, Natasha, like we miss out on the opportunity to connect with people in the valley. And the truth too, we got to connect with them in the valley because that's where they're going through their struggle, right? Their difficulty. Now, by versa, we have some people that now, when they speak, they're hanging out too long with people in the valley. So when they share, they're like oversharing the trauma they went through, and they're doing what I call trauma dumping, right? This is why they're like, whoa, it's me. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. I went through the foreclosure and the bankruptcy, and I lost all my money, and I had to go through surgery and this and that. And now they're all in the valley. But the problem of hanging out in the valley too much is you can't really serve people in the valley. And nor do people feel inclined to enroll into your products, your services, or to hire you with you camping out with them in the valley. So what we want to become great at is when we get the proper coaching, right? That's what we do in our company. We help entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches to be able to craft powerful messages that in the process of crafting their message, here's what they're doing in their story. They're first meeting people in the valley, okay? So they're relating to their ideal customer and client by showing that they understand the challenge, the struggle, and the problems that their customer and client is going through. Now that they connect with them in the valley, they're not camping out there. They're just saying, hey, look, I understand what you're going through. Like, I was struggling to get my events to an amazing place. I was struggling in business. I was struggling in my finance. I was struggling in my health. Fill in the blank, right? But I figured some things out. And let me tell you, now we curate some of the most amazing events. Now I have an amazing coaching business. Now I'm in awesome health. I have a happy, fulfilling relationship. And when you do it properly, Natasha, the big question becomes, how did you do it? Right? Because you connected with them in the valley, then you paint the picture of the thing that they desire in the peak, but then you didn't necessarily tell them exactly how you did it. So they're going to say, well, how did you do it? And when they say, how did you do it? This is where you offer your products and your services. This is where there's a gap, right? There's a gap between the valley, and there's a gap between the valley, which is where they're currently at, and the peak, the thing that they desire. And in that gap is where all the money is made. In the gap is where we offer our products, our services. In the gap is where we can go ahead and say, and this is how I can help you have a phenomenal event without stress, without dealing with all the things and so forth. This is how, in my case, I can help you to have the confidence and the clarity to be able to share your message, or someone's teaching it's for good health or whatever it is. This is where I can help you get happy, fulfilling relationship. You could have your, you can have a thriving business, whatever the thing is that you offer. This is where you offer it inside of the gap. And typically we want to name it something, right? There should be a process to work. And when we do that well, Natasha, like all of a sudden now, it doesn't feel like you're trying to sell people. You're not being pushy. All you're doing is sharing great stories, meeting people where they're at, painting the picture of the thing that they want, and then letting them know how you could help them, how you can support them.
Yeah, yeah. And even as you're sharing, I'm seeing your framework is shown in how you were describing your framework, right? So you're painting the picture, right, of someone who is an event planner, someone who is a coach. You illustrated that perfectly because everyone can understand what is in the gap. How did I go from this place to that place? And I think where some people might be challenged with explaining the gap is them not having that process, that framework, right?
Yeah. A lot of times too, they just didn't take the time to really look at their process. Because sometimes they make the other side, right? But they never stop to say, well, how did I make it? Oh, step number one, maybe I did some personal discovery. I examined myself and so forth. Step number two, maybe I created a plan. You know what I mean? Step number three, maybe I then came up with the execution strategy. So sometimes a lot of people have been taking the time to really think through what their framework is, what is their process for helping their customers and their clients to be able to get the result that they want.
Yeah, 100%. Because I felt the same way, right? I knew how to plan, manage, produce events, right? I've done that for several different types of events. And it wasn't until I had worked with a coach and she was like, okay, well, let's work on frameworks. And you have to come up with a 6-step framework. And when I thought about developing a framework, right, I had 10 steps. She's like, no. You have to narrow that down to how do you help people go from them having the vision of wanting to do their event to them actually executing and producing an event that was successful, profitable, right? I had never really thought about it. I just knew how to do the thing that I knew how to do. I never sat down and thought, okay, step one. I had it in my head. And then when I actually sat down and wrote out what the steps are, what are the things that we're doing in this particular area? What are the things that we're doing in step two? I realized, oh, I actually do have a process, but it was just so automatic to what it is that I've done because I've done it so many times that I now had to think through, how do I communicate this process to clients? And how do I support other people who are not looking to hire someone right now? How can I support them with doing their own events? So it's someone from the outside looking in to help do that.
And Natasha, why you say that, right? So where I then challenge my clients, right? And even where I would even challenge you is to then think about, okay, if you have the ability to maybe also assist other event planners and so forth, or even for your existing clients, right? You start thinking in advance, what are my clients dealing with, right? They've got the stress, they got to do an event. They got to, in addition to thinking about how the event's going to happen, they're thinking about the planning. They're dealing with the AV team. They're dealing with promoting the event. They're dealing with all the things that they got to order, the look and feel, the logistics, the team, and all this stuff that is going to stress them down and also keep them from having the experience that they want to curate. So then what happens is when we talk about storytelling, as opposed to entering the conversation like every other person who maybe is an event planner and say, hey, we're going to help you curate a great event. We're going to make sure it's amazing. It's awesome, which you would expect your event planners to do. What happens is what we do is we leverage a story to meet people where they're at. And maybe the story is about being at a place where we were ourselves going to do an event, where we were feeling stressed out, where we felt overwhelmed, because now the person who's your ideal customer and client is like, woohoo, Like you're talking to me right
That's
now.
me. That's me.
I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
event and I was dealing with the budget
Mhm.
and dealing and trying to promote the event and then having to figure out to run a show and people coming to ask me questions and all this stuff and all the stress that's involved with it, right? And then
Mhm.
saying this is what it was before until
Yeah.
the main thing is I found myself an amazing event planner. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
everything shifted because now the event planner, they were showing up, they had the complete thing, they took care of the run a show, they took care of
Mhm.
all of our speakers, they took care of all the decor so that I could just show up and show up as a brilliant version of me. And it was completely like night and day. Oh my gosh, really? That's what I need. How'd you do it? Well, let me tell you, I hired this lady. Her name is Natasha. Boom. You see what I'm saying? So that's
Yeah.
the part. When we can learn how to do that part, that's how it translates into more money, more business, more impact, right? That's the
Yeah.
part that, because what I never want people to do is to listen into a conversation like this and think that I'm just saying tell more stories. What I'm saying is, yes, you need to tell stories, but what I'm saying is you need to get coaching and learn how to strategically share stories, not for the sake of just telling stories, but stories that connect with people and then move them to taking action. Not just, oh, I told a story. Oh, I listened to Andy on the podcast and I was like, oh yeah, woohoo, I'm gonna tell stories. No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's really, really good because it's what is the difference between storytelling versus strategic storytelling? I have a bunch of different stories in my entrepreneurial journey that I could share about. I have a bunch of different life experience stories that I could share about. But what is that story or how are you crafting that story that is strategic to bring clients in? Why do you think storytelling is so powerful? Why is it that really honing in on a particular story is so powerful? And then beyond that, how do you know which story to tell? Because there's multiple things in my value story, and then there's multiple peak moment stories.
And Natasha, is when you say that, right? Way before I ever knew I was going to be a business storytelling coach, I was going to be a speaker, that I was going to have the opportunity to get in front of companies like NASA, Bacardi, Pratt& and Whitney, Accenture, Google. Before I had an opportunity to work with entrepreneurs and help them to craft their story, I discovered the power of storytelling as a teenager. And the crazy thing is, I didn't know this at the time, but then that's when I actually reflected back, right? And basically, I was in a situation where I had been begging my mom to buy me a car. And finally, she ended up getting the money to be able to buy me a car. And I was so grateful for that. But there was one catch. My mom told me I could not drive the vehicle until I could get a job and I could pay for the insurance. And so, very eager to be able to drive the car, I went to the local grocery store and I filled out an application with the store manager. His name was Mr. Olson. And when I submitted my application, Mr. Olson told me I'd come back in a couple more days. And so me very eager to get a job so I could pay for the insurance and I finally drive this car that was sitting in my driveway that I told all my friends that I had a car. This is before Instagram, Facebook. So if you didn't drive it to school, you were lying, right? So I needed to be able to drive this car to school so I could show it off, you know what I mean? And I remember going every couple of days to go see Mr. Austin. And he literally would just blow me off and say, come back in a couple more days. And I remember being so frustrated. It was like maybe 2.5 weeks of following up with Mr. Olson. And I remember like being desperate. And I went there after 2.5 weeks of following up on a Friday. I see Mr. Olson. The guy sees me, starts walking opposite direction. I run up to Mr. Olson. I was like, Mr. Olson, sir, my name's Andy Henriquez. I attend Plantation High School, sir. I turned 16. My mom bought me this black Ford Bronco 2 Eddie Bauer edition, sir. It's been sitting in my driveway. She won't let me drive the car until I get a job and I can pay for the insurance. And then in the middle of it, I said, Mr. Olson, sir, don't you remember your first car? And something shifted, Natasha, where all of a sudden he went down memory lane. And he was like, yeah, I had a Chevy Camaro. And he said, what'd you say your name was? And I said, Andy Henriquez. And I watched him. He went through the stack of application. And my application was like the bottom of the stack. And he took it and he put it at the top of the stack. And then he said, listen, in order for you to start working here, you got to come to orientation tomorrow. And I was like, wait a second. And sure enough, I got hired then on the spot. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. All the previous times I'm following up with Mr. Alston, he's telling me to come back and come back, come back and come back. And and finally something shifted, but I realized what shifted afterward. Finally told him my story. And it gave me an opportunity. Here I am, I'm, 16 years old. Mr. Alston, if I had to take a wild guess, he had to be in his late 40s. And I was able to connect with him because I shared my story about my first car and he could recall his first car. And that connection, getting Mr. Alston to be able to put himself in my shoes, allowed me as a 16-year-old to be able to influence this man and get him to go from telling me, come back, come back, come back, and me just being another application to now Mr. Alston telling me yes. And so here's the thing. You can end up just being another service, another product, another opportunity in the eyes of your prospect. If you just get caught up with just trying to talk about your products and talk about your services, but the moment you can take the thing that you have to share, you can put it inside of a story, what it allows you to do is be able to build connection. And as a result of building connection, you allow yourself to go from being last of consideration, which is where I was in the stack of applications, to top of consideration. You go from, no, not interested. Let me get back to you, to all of a sudden hearing a yes, and then being able to turn no's into yeses and be able to influence people just because you tap into the power of story. So why tell stories? Because they let us actually connect. They allow us to relate. They allow us to turn no's into yeses and allow us to go from being last of consideration to top of consideration. So that is why we want to be so intentional telling stories. And quite honestly, that is the moment I first discovered the power and the significance of storytelling. I didn't know at the time, but now imagine we do it sometimes without realizing it. But imagine now if you are being intentional and you are sharing those stories. And when you ask me the difference, Natasha, between just telling stories and being a strategic storyteller, the main thing is most people think they're telling stories, and number one, they're not. Okay. And we could get into that. But the other thing is,
I was like, what are they telling them?
What you're really doing, Natasha, is their story reporting, right?
Their story reported. I got it.
Natasha, you have been on the phone with a family member at the time when you had to put them on speakerphone, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, girl, let me tell you." And then this happened, and then I went to the grocery store, and then afterwards I did this. But wait a second, I forgot to tell you. While I was driving to the grocery store, I saw Dave in the car, right? And then afterwards, and then girl, I saw these slippers, and and you're listening. And from the time, number one, there's no specific point in the story.
Yes.
There's no conflict. And I would say, if no conflict, no story, right? And there's nothing specific. So here's the thing. The reason why this is dangerous and it's not storytelling, number one, Natasha, the only reason why you're staying on the phone with them is because you love them and their family. You would not give a telemarketer a millisecond opportunity to be able to tell her your story like
absolutely
right?
not.
Right? Because you're going to be like, no, not interested, hang up, right? Right. And then so the issue is we then have been conditioned to tell bad stories to our friends and family members. And then we go out in the marketplace. And now it's time to promote our products and our services. And we're still trying to tell that same stories, which is not storytelling. We're story reporting. In sequential order. We're inundating people with a bunch of information. One of my mentors used to tell me long time ago, he said, young man, never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. And most people are attempting to make a point and it's not landing because they didn't put in a story. And then number two, or they are trying to tell a story, which quite frankly is not a story and doesn't even have a point. And so when we start doing that enough, then we have cloudy messaging when we're trying to talk about our products and our services and what we do for each other, for people. And when your messaging is cloudy and people are unclear, when people are unclear, they can't take action, right? So then that's where it compounds, and that's where ultimately affects our business and affects our influence, because the lack of clarity leads to a lack of people taking action, which is lack of conversion, which is lack of sales, which is lack of results.
You said it needs to be specific and there needs to be some conflict within the story that you're telling. So strategic storytelling needs to be, number one, specific. It needs to have some conflict, but it also needs to land for people to take the next step or take another action. And I love that you framed the antithesis of strategic storytelling, which is story reported.
So they're literally just sitting there and just reporting. They're just reporting the details and the facts, and sadly, people aren't going to necessarily connect and relate to that because it's just information. But there's no connection to that information.
I recently read a book. It's called The Seventh Era of Marketing. And so one of the things that they were talking about inside of the book is that where we are now in marketing is you're not just selling the products or services that you have to offer. You're actually selling an experience. So what is that experience that you're taking people through? I was looking at it from the perspective of not only my business, but how that relates to events. As you're talking, I'm realizing that it's across the board. It's really not about saying, I can help you with planning your event, or I can help you with losing weight. It's really, what is the experience that you're going to provide for people, and how is that experience shown through the strategic story that you're telling? A lot of the listeners here, they want to host their own events. They want to be on stage. They want to be speakers. When someone is hosting their event, is there a difference, the story that you're telling to help support your marketing or build your brand, and the story that you're telling through your content?
So Natasha, 100%. So we have an annual conference that we host. It's called Story into Profit Live, right? So the website is Story into Profit Live. We actually hosted down here in South Florida in October. This year, it'll be October 10th through the 12th, right? As we're promoting this event, there's several things that we're doing. First and foremost, what we've done is we've taken a lot of the powerful stories that I shared and our other speakers shared during last year's events, and we are leveraging those stories on social media. Matter of fact, there's one story that I shared that video got 3 million views, and I happen to have been on the stage at my event when I told that story. And so we leveraged the story that came from the event, right? The other thing is that we also share the stories of the transformation and the things that happen for the people who are actually at our event, right? So the people who are at our event, here's the stories of the things that happen. And we share the story about what was the experience that took place from the previous years. Matter of fact, we were sending out our email campaign, and in our email campaign, my first 5 emails in the email campaign were all stories that I was sharing from the previous year's event, right? And so one of which is last year, one of the guest speakers that I had was Dr. Tracy Lynn. She started out with $200 and she built $100 million.
I love her.
Right. And so we're sitting on stage together and we're having a conversation. And while we're having the conversation, she talked about her 2 dogs, right? She has a German Shepherd named Coco, and then she has a smaller dog named Georgie. And so what happened is she got Coco, the German Shepherd, was a big dog now, but she got Coco as a little puppy. And so Coco, for the longest, really wasn't ever really looking around the mirror. And Coco was always in the presence of another small dog. And then she remembered the one day when Coco finally got big and there was a mirror, and Coco looked in the mirror, and Coco was like a little bit afraid of what she was seeing in the mirror, because of the fact that she had been around a small dog for so long. She had looked in the mirror that she forgot that she was a big dog. Okay. And so what happens is we can get around people who have small mindsets. We could get around people in environments that make us forget who we are. And so me and Dr. Lynn are on the stage and she's telling that story. And then I go right off of, wow, remember this story that Dr. Lynn was sharing? And this is why it's so important that you get around the big dogs. This is why you get around the right environment, which is why I want to invite you to come and join us again at Story into Profit Live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, October 6th. So you see what I did there? I told the story. I leveraged the story to make a powerful point from the story. Now I invite them, which is different than, oh, just come to Story into Profit Live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what we mean by finding ways to leverage and share the story. The same thing would apply. If you're trying to get sponsors, you're going to go ahead and tell the story behind your event. What you guys doing? The transformation that actually gets created, the stories to get people to understand why they need to be there. Every single time now, when I'm promoting my Master Storyteller Academy, which is our 3-day virtual training where we work with entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, and we help them to craft their signature story. Even during my academy, I'm going to also be sharing the story. This person, was struggling with getting more customers and clients. They came to the academy. We helped them to get more clarity, help them with their message. They use the message to be able to get more customers, get more clients, increase their conversions. This is why you should also come to our Master Storytelling content. So we're always using stories to promote the event, promote the next day, and so forth. And that is what's going to create the connection. And the mistake that most people do, Natasha, is that they're talking to people about the plane instead of the destination. So when we talk about the plane, what we're doing is we're getting to the specifics, right? We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And you're going to get this workbook and all this stuff. But what people want is the destination. In the event planning world, it's sort of like talking about the plane is that, hey, look, we're going to have a meeting so we could talk about the vision for your event. We're going to do weekly check-in session. You know what I mean? We're going to make sure we handle your budgeting.
Yes. Sounds familiar.
That's great, right? But you're talking to me about the plan. Yeah. What do I care about? The destination. What is the destination? I want to be able to show up for my event and show up fully and be able to just focus on adding value for the people who are attending my event without having the stress of worrying about what's going on, without the stress of people coming up and asking me questions so I can show up. Look, I want the destination, baby, right? That's what you want to spend more time talking to me about is, look, the reason why you want to hire us is so that you don't have to worry about someone coming up to you in the middle of the event. So you don't have to be putting out situations so that you could just focus on your brilliance, so that you could be on stage and be dynamic and do. That's the part that I care about. And the rest of the stuff are the things you have to do. But everyone wants to talk about the things they want to do. They have to do as opposed to the destination. And the reason why I'm going to stroke the check is for the destination, not because of the things you're doing.
I learned that lesson too. I put together an event plan before, and it has over 100 different things that need to be done for the event in different categories. And I remember I gave that to one of my clients, and I'm like, these are the things that we need to go through. She's like, this just feels very overwhelming. What I learned from that is that even though internally we need that list, that's not something that the client needs to see fully. They just need to know high level, what are the things that are happening? What are the things that have already been done? What we're working on?
And the thing is, like a client like me, I am very detailed. So I will want to get into the minutia and all that. But however, when you are getting me to make the buying decision, that's not where you want my focus.
Yeah.
You want my on the destination that after
Gotcha.
I've bought. Now, okay, these are the things we want to do to make sure you have a successful event. But when we lead with that at the conversation to get people to take action, that doesn't always bear the fruit. So then it becomes very transactional. So now there's no connection. Now I just make my decision just based off of price, and you don't want me to do that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you shared that, because I'm seeing for myself what are some things that I need to work on. And I hope that listeners, you're seeing how you can tell the story of your brand in a way that is more strategic and doesn't overwhelm people, but lets them know where you're going to take them as a result of working with you. When we talk about stories, there's really a part of your overall brand. When you think about what I like to call your brand universe, it's your mission, your vision, your values, but it's also the story that you tell. As you're working on your brand aesthetics and you're working on your mission and you're working on your vision, you also have to think about what is that story that is also a part of your brand universe, and have it be a thread that is part of your event experience as well.
And Natasha, I don't know if you remember, but when we were at that event, I provided a QR code, because what I needed people to know was it's not just one story, right? There are 5 different types of stories, right? And we may not get into all of them, but there's 5 different types of stories. They serve different purposes, right? One story allows us connection and rapport so that people even care about our products and services. Another kind of story we call offer story is so that we could do a better job of converting people to buying our products and services because the offer story tackles objections and helps people to see the value of our products and our
Mhm.
service. And then if we're doing sort of like you said, some of the people
Uh-huh.
listening in, they want to be on stage, they want to speak. But when you're doing longer form presentations, 30-minute, 45-minute, hour presentations, you need different stories for your presentation that are going to land for the audience. We refer to it as landing stories, right? And then there's two additional stories. And maybe what we could do is find a way to give them that QR code or give them a link so that they can
Yeah.
be able to download the PDF that walks them through all 5 of those stories. But that's the thing. It is so critical. It is so super critical that we have the ability to be able to share and craft and put together those stories that is going to allow us both to be able to make impact and then also be able to
Uh-huh.
make it as a result of sharing those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely drop the link to that workbook so that you can all download that and get into the 5 different types of stories that you could tell. And before we close out the conversation, I know that you mentioned your own event.
Yeah. So here's what really, really awesome, right? So prior
Mhm.
to COVID, I
Mhm.
was hosting, primarily just speaking at other people's conferences as a traditional
Mhm.
speaker and so forth. And I'd always,
Uh,
I, I do smaller scale events, but we were like, look, we need to do our annual conference. So
mhm.
last, we made the commitment and it was off the charts. Like I told you, we had
Awesome.
Dr. Tracy Lynn, we had Lamar Tyler, who him and his wife started off with a marriage blog and they built an 8-figure business, traffic, sales, and profit. We had Trevor Otts, the CEO of Black CEO, come in, talk about marketing. We had Alicia Little, who is the queen of AI, talk about how to leverage AI to be able to
Mhm.
grow, scale your business. We had Star Babatune
Mhm.
talk about be a dynamic presenter from the stage. And the most important thing is this was for purpose-driven entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches that want to be able to take their message and really monetize it and take their story
Mhm.
and turn profit. So last year was our inaugural conference. This is the second year of the conference. It
Yes.
was off the charts, and we're looking forward to taking it to the next level this year. So it's going to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, October 10th through the 12th. And people want to check it out. It's storyintoprofitlive.com, storyintoprofitlive.com.
And we'll also link that there as well. This is the second year of the event that you hosted. What was
Yeah.
your experience when you thought about actually hosting this event?
Overwhelmed beyond
Yeah.
the answers why it's so important that people need to
Yeah.
hire your agency and hire people like you, right? When you're
Yeah.
going to do an event, I just look back. So us doing the event, first of all, to put on the event, we are spending like basically 6 figures practice, right? For
Yep.
the event. We're dealing with AV team. We're dealing with promotion. We're dealing with banners. I got a television appearance to promote the event. We have things that have to be ordered in, run a show, speakers that have to be booked, speaker scheduling, hotel that has to be negotiated, food and beverage, hotel room blocks, and so forth. So you can see me rattling these things off, Natasha. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with these things.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so the trying to do all that and be prepared for your event and make sure you're going to get the content and all the other things to think about with the experience you want to curate. It is
Mhm.
literally insane to think you're going to do all that on your own. You absolutely must have an event planner. And so that is why people have to hire your agency, Natasha, is because that they've got to have an event planner that is going to be able to help them to be able to show up for their event and enjoy the event and the experience that they want to create and not be killing themselves trying to do everything on their own.
You don't want to be doing all those things on your own, or you become scattered. You're not in a space where your nervous system is fully regulated enough for you to step on stage and really show up in the way that you want to show up. So thank you so much for bringing that conversation full circle.
Matter
And
of
I
fact,
hope-
for people listening in, I would say that
Yeah.
they want to make sure they take advantage of the super early bird. So right now we're running the
Yeah.
super early bird ticket prices. As we got close to the event, Natasha, our VIP ticket went past $2,000 to give you an idea.
Mm.
And our super early bird right now, like the prices are ridiculous what people can get it. And I always tell people now, because then they regret it later for not securing their spot early. We currently are running the super early bird and it is the lowest that the ticket prices will be. And so they definitely, if they plan on joining us, they want to grab their tickets right away.
Get the super early bird, because the thing is, people always wait until the last minute. But if you could get it early, there's an advantage for you to be able to do so by saving some money. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here with me, Andy. Before I let you go, what is one last gem that you'd like to share with the listeners? It could be business related or personal related. What's one last gem?
Yeah, I'll say this. The shortest distance between you and the people that you want to do business with is really a well-crafted and well-told story. And when we talk about telling stories, we're not just talking about telling stories for the sake of telling stories. It's just that we want to be able to connect with people and also be able to paint the vision of the thing that we know that they want, right? So if you want to give yourself a competitive advantage, you want to separate yourself from the competition, make sure that you get the skill set and the ability to strategically tell stories that connect and convert people into customers and clients.
I love it. I love it. Strategic storytelling is how you connect and convert people into becoming clients. So we're going to have all the websites, everything that we spoke about today. We're going to have that linked in the show notes. We'll also have Andy's social media handles and website linked in the show notes. So if you'd like to connect with him, please find him somewhere on the internet. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I hope you caught those gems. Now, let's fly.